Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Drawing Strength from Words, a Four Horsemen novel, Book 2 by C.A. King, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Dust took flight, dislodged by the force of a wooden gavel slamming down on its circular base. Tiny white particles, barely visible to the eye, floated down in no hurry to return to the spots from whence they came. They were in Lady Justice's house, and while she might have worn a blindfold, those in her employ most certainly did not. Here, even the smallest particle of dirt had reason to be petrified by the wrath of the presiding judge. A second loud bang sounded, echoing through the courtroom, this one powerful enough to send vibrations up and down Ryder's spine. If there had been any doubt the judge's decision was final, it was long gone, frightened off by the strong grasp of the right hand of the law. Guilty. That word had a permanent place in his mind, and with this latest loss was etched on his soul. That was to be expected, though. He had, after all, heard it enough times. This was his 10th conviction, and every one for a crime he hadn't committed. Ryder swallowed, feeling the tie around his neck tightening with all the care of a noose's grip. He loosened its hold, sticking 2 fingers inside his collar, hoping to stretch it enough to allow some breathing room. Suits simply weren't comfortable. He had no idea how businessmen made it through one day after another locked in the designer jail known as high fashion. The prosecutor to Ryder's right looked down at his paperwork, nodding and moving sheets around as if pondering different options. Given a chance, he had an arsenal of ploys tucked away up his sleeve, and his latest bout of showboating was only just the beginning. It took years of appearances before numerous judges to perfect his performance, but perfected it was. All the little man had to do was appear to know what the best route to follow was. Once that was accomplished, it was easier to convince others to agree with his proposals. As an opposing attorney, he was as stereotypical as they came, a book lying open at the same place, never once having its pages flipped. If he had been part of a dictionary, he would be listed under P, for pathetic. At least that would have been the perfect place for a picture of the shell of a man to appear. The twinkle in his eye that had once represented all the great feats a young enthusiastic counselor planned to accomplish was all but extinguished, making way for mediocrity and complacency. Generic enough to represent the masses, he was the epitome of a middle-aged, balding man who owned only one suit, and by the looks of his shirt, didn't own an iron or perhaps didn't know how to use one. From the way one of his hands clung to a wedding ring, his pudgy fingers twisting it, there was little doubt his wife had recently left him, most likely for a colleague with a fatter pension. Holding a position of prestige meant nothing if it didn't come part and parcel with the benefits that usually accompanied such titles. Practitioners employed within the system itself simply didn't make the same income as those who represented individuals with fat wallets and money to burn. Every ounce of loathing he had for his own miserable existence, every moment of regret for not making it further in his career, was about to come pouring out through his dull gray eyes. The second it escaped, all that pent-up anger would be redirected at the easiest target in the room. Being the scapegoat wasn't anything new to Ryder. He'd been blamed all his life for everything that was wrong with anyone else. If the court had its way, he would be sentenced to burn in hell for every little detail that was wrong in each and every one of their lives. Why no one else could see that as clearly as he did was a mystery. The only thing standing between another grave injustice and even swifter punishment was Merv. Ryder side-eyed his own representation, the same man who always managed to come to his aid no matter what the situation. His attorney didn't even flinch, all the while knowing he was being watched. Being scrutinized under a microscope came with the territory of counsel for the defense. As far as lawyers went, Merv didn't miss a step. Confidence oozed from his pores, forcing those who opposed him to take a few steps back and rethink their plans. He possessed a rare talent, The gift of the gab, having been born with a silver tongue that could cast doubt on a nun's testimony about the existence of God. The only thing that didn't make sense was what a professional of his caliber was doing defending a petty criminal up on vandalism charges. The prosecutor cleared his throat. "Your Honor," he said, voice wavering slightly, "if I may, I'd like to offer a few suggestions for sentencing." "I think our honorable judge is capable of deciding a fitting punishment on his own," Merv argued. This particular offender had been in front of this court on numerous occasions. Clearly, stiffer penalties are needed. I recommend placement in a psychiatric detention facility for evaluation. The prosecutor dropped his papers, granting his full attention to the judge. One hand behind his back twitched, a primitive form of sign language based purely on fear. "Your Honor," Merv started, "there is a waiting list of criminals truly needing such a placement. Clearly, a simple case of vandalism isn't a priority." The gavel slammed down on the wooden desk again. "Order," the judge bellowed. "I won't have this court turned into a circus. As it stands, I agree with both of you. The Psychiatric Evaluation Center has better use of its limited spaces. At the same time, this young man is a multiple-time offender. Jail time simply isn't working." The judge pushed a tiny pair of round glasses further up the bridge of his nose as he scribbled notes on the back of court documents in a form only he himself would later be able to decipher. "That is why this court orders a term of community service." "Your Honor," the prosecutor objected, pulling a handkerchief from one pocket to dab spots of perspiration forming on his brow. "Such a lenient sentence is a crime in itself. I beg the court to reconsider." "Silence," the judge demanded, pointing his gavel at the lawyer, suggesting that lack of compliance might result in the bald spot on his head being the next place it came down. "The Ancient History Library is going through major renovations. They could use some volunteer help. I expect the term to be served in full there. There are adequate accommodations located on the premises. The defendant is to remain a guest there for a period of 1 year. "Thank you, Your Honor," Merv said. "Make no mistake, sir," the judge stated. "If your client fails to perform his duties, I will revise my judgment to accept the prosecution's suggestions. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir," Ryder replied. He stood perfectly still, a statue frozen in time, waiting for the judge to make a swift exit before breathing. The worst was over, and yet only now beads of sweat were making their presence known. A familiar feeling loomed over him. He didn't even need to turn around to actually see it to know it existed. The heat radiating across his back simply wasn't natural. Some would have called it paranoia. He, however, knew it was from being watched, and if he had to guess, whoever it was had the eyes of a dead man. Fingers rubbed over his face as if scrubbing away dried-on dirt. Inside, Ryder trembled, but on the exterior, he had no intention of showing fear. The bodies and faces connected to those glares often changed, but the black of their eyes always remained the same. They followed him everywhere he went, and had since he was just a boy. Never underestimate the power of a stare. The fright it instilled alone was dominant, but that wasn't where its power ended. That lifeless glare had the ability to drill deep inside him and harvest every ounce of emotion it produced. As hard as he tried to hide it all well within his core, in the end, it didn't matter. This was an opponent that had his number. At any time, the game could have ended. He was no match for them, yet they never took their final move. Ryder's eyes glanced over at the prosecutor, who was faring no better than himself. The man slouched back in his chair, listless save for the shaking of one knee, well hidden under the protection of a wooden table. The color of his face drained to match the same shade of white as the paper scattered in front of him. The weight of 1,000 souls sentenced to purgatory lifted off of Ryder's shoulders in search of a new unfortunate victim to latch onto. The defeated lump of a lawyer was an easy target. Plain and simple, the man had failed. His penance for that failure was an endless depth of sorrow and pain brought on by the owners of those black eyes. New shivers ran up and down Ryder's spine, though these one not knowing which way to head for safety. How many times had those bottomless pools of darkness sized him up from behind in the same manner they now did for the prosecutor? "Ready?" Merv asked. "Yeah," Ryder replied, still focused on the other man. "Is he okay? Maybe we should call someone." Merv glanced over. "He's fine," he answered, ushering his client by the arm out a side door. Losing cases is never easy. Chapter 2. Taking a side door outside landed them in the same place as the front would have, descending the white stone stairs in the front of the building. Ryder's long legs took 2 steps at a time, leaving him waiting at the bottom for his lawyer to catch up. "A library," Ryder complained, lighting a cigarette. "What am I supposed to do in a library?" He inhaled deeply, catching sight of a couple on the opposite side of the street. Those eyes. "You could try reading for one," Merv replied. He stopped short, turning to his client. "This isn't optional. Time will fly by. You'll see. You need to go there and just do a good job." "Like my life depends on it?" Ryder scoffed, flicking the ashes off the stick wedged firmly between 2 fingers. "It just might," Merv replied, grabbing his client's cigarette and tossing it on the ground. The sole of his shoe came down hard, extinguishing it. "I won't always be able to win for you. That ever-growing rap sheet of yours is going to be your downfall. One day it won't matter what I say." "Why not give up on me then?" Ryder snapped. Merv pushed him up against the black car sent to fetch them. "I made a promise and I intend to do everything I can to keep it. A little help from you would be nice once in a while." "I didn't do anything," Ryder blurted out. "Funny thing is, you never do," Merv complained. "If it truly is the people around you who always get you in trouble, you need to find new friends. Stop letting them drag you down. Don't take the fall all the time. They aren't your responsibility." "Easy for you to say," Ryder replied, fixing his collar. "It seems everyone is out to get me. Except you." "Then don't bite the hand that feeds you," Merv exclaimed, opening the car door. "Get in. I'm taking you to get settled. I'll arrange for your possessions to be brought over later. Use your time at the library to rethink things. Your parents would have wanted you to do better for yourself. I want you to do better for yourself." "Dad!" a girl exclaimed, running towards them, no more than 15, but trying to look 30. A strong breeze caught her skirt, lifting it high enough to satisfy the needs of any peeping toms hanging out in front of the courthouse waiting for their cases to be heard. Merv groaned, rolling his eyes. "Darling," he said, turning to face his daughter, "what are you doing here?" "Do I need a reason to visit my father?" she cooed. "I saw on the calendar you were in court this morning, and I thought we could grab some lunch." Merv chuckled. "I'd love nothing more, but I am a little busy." He motioned to Ryder, already seated in the car. "Let's cut to the chase. Why are you really here, Mirabelle?" Mirabelle shrugged her shoulders, her arms flailing up high before falling back down at her sides. Trading in her pleasant schoolgirl smile for a dissatisfied pout, she linked her arm with her father's. "Mother isn't being fair." "Oh, Mirabelle," Merv complained. "Is this about the grounding again? We have been over this already. Your mother's decision is final. I am not going to go behind her back and change things. You need to work this out with her." Mirabelle stomped her foot. "How can you agree with her? It's totally unfair. Everyone is going to the party Saturday. I'll be the laughingstock of town if I don't go." "Mirabelle," Merv yelled, his hand reaching into one pocket to retrieve a brown leather wallet. A crisp bill snapped between his first 2 fingers and thumb. "Take a cab straight home," he ordered, handing her the money. "We'll discuss this later." "But," Merv waggled his finger in her direction. "No buts," he said. "If your mother finds out about this, you could find yourself missing a lot more than just one party. I have to go back to work now. I trust you have the sense to listen to reason." Mirabelle's shoe kicked at the array of cigarette butts scattered over the sidewalk. Her eyes locked on the ground. "I suppose," she muttered. "It's not fair, though." Merv bent over, planting his lips on her cheek with a peck. Tell your mom I'll be late for dinner. Chapter 3. Mirabelle watched the car speed away, leaving her standing at the side of the road, hands planted firmly on her hips. What father did that? She was facing the biggest disaster of her life. Was it too much to ask that he be there for her? Life simply wasn't fair. She'd spent months dreaming about even an inkling of a chance of going out with Bobby, a dream every girl at her school shared. None of them, however, had the same connection she did with him. The other girls only saw him as an object, the most popular guy in school, the quarterback of the football team, and a stepping stone to the best social life anyone could ever want. They were all far too shallow. Bobby deserved better. He deserved to be with her. What she had with Bobby was truly spiritual. A moment of contentment filled with sunny skies and rainbows transformed into a fast-moving wave of gray clouds fueled by anger. Her parents were ruining everything. What if she never had the chance to bring their love to its full fruition? Her own sense of self-importance trumped paying attention to her surroundings. Her feet tangled over a brown leather briefcase sticking out from under a bench. With a fall already underway, she clenched her eyes closed, waiting for the inevitable. If she ended up with bruises, her father was to blame. Then at least she could have proven child abuse. While it was a true time slowed down when one fell, the amount that passed by in this case was a little too long. Her eyes blinked open, their gaze returned by a set almost equally as beautiful as her own. "Are you okay?" the man asked, returning her to her feet in a swooping motion. "That could have been a nasty tumble. I should be more careful where I put my bag. I accept all responsibility. Please accept my humble apology." He bowed his head to her. A silver gray suit, salt and pepper hair, and a smile that can melt the heart of an ice queen. This man truly was her knight in shining armor, and she the damsel, no, princess in distress, willing to be saved. The lines around his eyes smiled at her, agreeing with her assessment. A simple wink sent her heart fluttering in directions she hadn't known possible.